Now, some good news in the show. Yeah, the writers' strike is over, as we reported last week. We reported it first before anyone else says,
Hell yeah.
but we didn't. No, obviously.
We win.
So the details of the deal that they've struck came out, and for this part of the video, we're going to be breaking down exactly what was said. And Greg, do you want to take it bit by bit and kind of go through them? This comes from Screen Rant, who've wonderfully put out a list. And number one point is Hollywood has improved the showrunner training program. So crucially, this is said to be the number one point. The WGA have reached an agreement to renew the $250,000 in annual funding for the showrunner training program. So this is basically a program that helps creators and writer producers hone their skills so that they can become basically accomplished professionals in their field and then go on to, basically learn what they've watched when shadowing other creators and run their own show. In the past, they weren't putting that much money into it, and you were kind of creating a sort of I want to say dead end where people were coming on board, writers seeing what was going on, but their contracts would be cut short and ended at the end of a show, and they'd get no more experience on that, wouldn't get hired for anything else, and they just basically live their life just being these bottom level people who never had any chance of promotion or working their way up to that. So that's a pretty good solid thing.
Is part of that to compensate for because a lot the writers really wanted to get rid of the writers' rooms, not the writers' rooms. What were those called? Mini rooms, not the writer. They want to get rid of the writers' rooms. They want to get rid of the mini rooms, and they weren't able to successfully get rid of that. But I feel like this helps alleviate some of the pain of still having to keep that on, because you get to have an extended contract and you get an opportunity to really getting the skills developed so you can be a showrunner one day, which is generally like if you don't want to become, a screenwriter for, films, this is actually one of the next best things where you could become like the writer producer head of it, essentially the Vince Gilligan or the Tina Fey. I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah. What's the next point?
The next point, if we're going in the order here, screenwriters, they've been secured improved terms for high budgets SVOD, subscription video on demand. So in order for screenwriters to be able to secure the fixed domestic and foreign residuals for VOD and SVOD, they needed streaming data transparency. Therefore, the WGA must now be provided with the total number of hours a series or feature-length film is streamed both domestically and internationally under a confidentiality agreement, meaning the public won't see it, but they can see it. This includes certain high-budget original series like Stranger Things or Wednesday, the numbers for which the WGA may share with its members, who will now be paid 150% premium for original pilots for high-budget streaming videos on demand and 115% premium for backup scripts. This is so... It's interesting that they're going to be able to see it, and you have to become like a really successful working writer to get this. I liken it to how like the government knew about aliens and they couldn't talk about it. We all want to know the streaming numbers, and now the writers are going to be able to know. I think this is a really big win for the writers, though, because if I'm not mistaken, originally studios were AMPTP was we're not going to show you jack shit. We're never going to show you any of this. And now they have at least conceded to, all right, we'll show you, but you just got to keep your mouth shut. Things are going to get leaked, though. Someone's going to leak some stuff, and we're going to get some numbers.
100%. And I've always theorized that the reason they haven't let this stuff get out is because of how much it would affect the company's stock. For example, if they release a big show, they say they've got 14 million viewers on. We'll not name any names. But I like Ahsoka, by the way. We're getting negative. I'm just making a joke. Yeah, the 14, that was the most recent show I could think of. But yeah, if it turned out that wasn't actually the case because someone leaked the numbers out, it would obviously make people question exactly what the streaming numbers are, and it could cause negative effects on the stock. So I can see why the studios have wanted to keep this secret in the past. They obviously know their own streaming numbers. But yeah, they want to keep this locked down. We'll see if it gets out, but at least with the writers, they can have more transparency and think, at least I know I'm not getting ripped off when I only get paid so much, but they're also online saying, look how successful this show is. And it's like, actually, it's not that successful, but they're just doing PR work so that the company doesn't sink. So yeah, I think that's one of the best things that they've got out of it, to be honest.
Definitely.
That's a massive help to them. And yeah, and screenwriters, point three, screenwriters have a new streaming deal. So this says one of the biggest priorities for the WGA was finding a way to have writers' compensation reflect the success of wildly popular streaming series like Stranger Things or Euphoria. Fortunately, in addition to the fixed existing residuals, the Guild established a viewership-based model as well that would reward shows and thus writers with greater viewership, and studios agreed. I don't actually know what this means, Greg. I'm reading through it.
I was hoping you would
Um,
explain it, man.
yeah, it's
I
just saying
was
that
reading
they.
along like Paul's gonna get this down for me. He's gonna put it into a language that Greg's brain can comprehend.
What's happening is I'm trying to read it and make it sound like I know I can read, and then when I'm messing up words, I'm focusing on that thing, and oh my god, people listening to the podcast are gonna think I can't read, and they're gonna make fun of me. They're gonna be writing comments, but I'll not be able to say them because I can't read, Greg. So what it says, as an example of what that would look like for writers, it would include bonuses like $9,000 for a half episode on Netflix, Amazon, or other major streaming services, and $40,000 for a feature-length film with a $30 million budget. Yeah, don't know what any of that means, but yeah, screenwriters have a new streaming deal according to that. Now, point four so point four. Just before you get into it, this was the big thing that kind of held up the negotiations last time.
Oh yeah, I was still trying to read it and go, let me see if I can understand this a little bit better. But it sounds like they'll get good money if a half-hour show is a success and an
Yeah,
hour show is a
you get a
success.
bonus.
Bottom line.
Yeah.
Staffing terms and duration provisions have improved for episodic series. If a series is in between seasons or something happens during in the middle of development, there are now provisions in the WGA contract that ensure writers remain on television shows affected by the writer's strike, a global pandemic, or something else. It's good that they're factoring in another global pandemic. These are in the form of development rooms, aka pre-greenlight rooms. That's part of what I was talking about earlier. Development rooms and mini rooms established before and during the production of a series. Their minimum weekly rate compensation will follow the 9 weeks of work, 10 to 19 weeks of work, and 20 plus weeks of work models, and 3 writers in the room for 6 or fewer episodes. Got it. Oh, okay. And 5 if there are 7 to 12 episodes, and 6 if there are 13 or more. And I think one thing that's not mentioned here is that if it's 6, like there has to be a writer producer. A certain number of those staff have to be a writer producer, but you can kind of interchange between them. So if there's like 20 episodes, you don't need to have, like I'm talking about like showrunner or the people when they were saying they get paid $11,000 or whatever. The Article 14 writers, you need at least a writer producer for like 2 to 3 or something like that, right? If I'm not mistaken. Do you remember that, Paul? Do you know that information?
That sounds good.
I was trying to contribute to this paragraph here, and I think I did it.
You've contributed nothing. And the next couple of points is basically the next point is screenwriters have secured a minimum writer's room size and compensation structure. So again, it's kind of tying into that. You'll have a minimum amount of staff on, I can't say minimum this week. You'll have that many amount of staff on a show that'll help you out. You know, if there's a lot of stuff you need to go through, it's not just resting on one person's shoulder. The next one is screenwriters have secured an improved pay deal, which obviously, you know, if you're striking, it's pretty much 100% always going to be down to pay disputes. Along with this, point 7, screenwriters will receive better health insurance and pension contributions, which again is to be expected in a strike. But the most interesting one, I think, even though I've probably said that for every single point, is that Hollywood's use of AI in the writing process will be way more transparent.
Oh
So,
yeah.
what they can do now is that there were lots of rumors. Obviously, Greg, you know about it, that AI was going to get brought massively into the way that things were going to be written going forward. And we even saw during the strike that there were several job listings for people like AI person who looks over technician stuff, and it's like 180 grand a year or something crazy. And there was that big worry that AI was basically going to get brought in to take everyone's jobs, and what would happen was Hollywood would go to the machine, type in some prompts like "make a $1 billion movie for me," and it'd pop out a script that was like Avengers Endgame 2, and they would then hire a writer to come in, pay them a basic rate, and basically just go through the script and correct the spelling mistakes and be like, "Oh, Tony Stark's dead, so we can't really use him," and stuff like that. Now, what's actually happened with this deal is they pretty much scrapped, I would say, a majority of all the things that AI would be doing. So a writer can now decide whether they want to use AI or not. I would be like, yeah, so that I'm taking the weekend off, mate. Write the whole script for me. Obviously, yeah, so any material generated by AI can't be used to undermine a writer's credit or be considered source material. A writer can, of their own free will, choose to use AI as a tool provided by the company, as long as the company consents to this. Um, that being said, as well, a company cannot require its writers to use AI software as part of their work. The company also has to be upfront with the writers about whether materials given to them during the course of their work have been generated through the use of AI. The WGA can assert the exploration of writers' materials, particularly to train AI, which is prohibited under law. It's crucial that writers know what's happening to their material, consent to how it's used, and understand whether ideas could be plagiarized, misrepresented, and altered by AI enough to effectively put them out of business. So we've basically, Greg, we've stopped Skynet before we've basically stopped Skynet before it all kicks off. Now, another thing that this kind of ties into, SAG's meeting this week, I believe on Wednesday, to talk to the
Yeah.
ATMTPPT about everything. Judging by how this deal's gone, I'm guessing something's going to happen closer to that. Now, you might remember a couple of weeks back, we talked about how actors could be brought in, scanned, given like $50, and then told to do one. And basically, the studio could use their complete body scan as a part of someone in the background of a scene or an extra or something, and never have to pay them again. Judging by this, it sounds like they're going to scrap that as well, which I'm hoping, because that just puts so many people out of work.
Mhm.
But hearing that AI is getting shut down and writers can choose whether to use it or not, they can decide and consent on whether their work's used and pulled into AI. It sounds bloody great. What you feeling on that, Greg?
It all sounds great. I still think that it doesn't feel like I'm not 100% confident that the studios will completely oblige. I feel like there's going to be some shady things that still happen, and there's going to be things the Writers Guild or they're going to be fighting against. It's so easy to get away with using AI and not having to disclose it. You know what I mean? Because it's
Yeah,
AI. And something can be generated. It's like they could just find out if you can submit something and you don't have to disclose it, and it's hard to find the paper trail for something like that. So I still feel like that. I don't know. I got my cautious side up, like of I still think the studios might pull some shit and not disclose it to the writers, because like one of the things is that if they have an idea, if the studios have an idea and they want to write and they want a writer to they hire someone to write it, but if the idea was generated by AI, they have to disclose that. And the fact that an idea was generated by AI might turn off a writer from wanting to do it just because of that fact, because like the fight and the divide between AI and writer is such a big gap, and there's it's it's turbulent. And I think that I'm basically saying that I think the studios have the capacity to do some AI shit and feel like they don't have to disclose it. And that's my big
yeah.
concern about it.
Like they buy an office for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, called like Allen Iverson 2. And
Allen
it's
Iverson
basically,
too.
it's like, oh, who, can I just go meet my colleague in there? I haven't met him yet. "Oh, don't go in that room. Don't go in that room." And one night they sneak in to see what's going on. It's just a computer with a printer attached to it, just coughing out scripts. Very worrying AI, I find. The creator kind of brought me round on it. It was like, maybe AI is good and we can all be friends with it. But yeah, the fact that it's just completely putting so many people out of work. I can imagine there's so many freelance artists that are just not getting work anymore because YouTubers in the past would have used them to do thumbnails and they'll just instead type in a prompt and get the exact same thing. well, that looks slightly off, but it is improving. To be fair, I think AI is going to get better and better, and it's
Yeah.
very unfortunate how much work it's going to take away from
I mean,
people.
you can get an idea from AI and just not copy and paste it, you know? You're like, "Oh,
Yeah,
that's a great idea. Alright, well, I'm just gonna delete this, and now I'm gonna write something," you know? It's really easy to get
yeah.
away with it.
Yeah, that's why I'm so glad there's been these restrictions put in place, because I know I'm sounding quite jovial about it, but it is quite worrying. And yeah, just getting a victory over it on that, and we'll see what happens. These deals get negotiated every 3 years, so hopefully they stick to that. Because I think
Yeah.
Hollywood must realize as well that by doing this, they're killing their talent pool. There's going to be so many people in 10 years' time that haven't been brought up through the system and aren't able to produce shows for them at all, and they're just instead regurgitating all this crap. But to be fair, the creator bombed, so maybe they're just like, oh, well, we're not going to try anything original anyway.